My name is Dr. Tom Gehring. I'm a professor at the Center for the Study of Correctional Education at California State University, San Bernardino. I've admired Dr. McKee's work for a long time. We came to Atlanta for the International Correctional Education Association Conference this year, 2007. Dr. McKee was assigned the Lifetime Achievement Award by the Correctional Education Association. It's the most coveted award in the field. So being close by in Atlanta, I seized this opportunity. The McKees were very gracious. I came to their home, came to Pace Learning Center, and that's where we're doing this interview. So today I'm going to meet with Dr. John McKee. He's going to talk with us about his life in the field of correctional education. Dr. McKee, can you cite some early life experiences that you think contributed to your inclination to work in research and development in correctional education?
I started out in college at Emory University majoring in psychology, and I learned there some of the fundamental concepts of behavior science. And I saw only a very limited use for them, mainly in clinical psychology, you see, and in psychological practice. I didn't go beyond the therapy room at that point. I didn't know what was beyond that.
So you treated them as tool subjects to use for later applications in correctional education?
Yes, but the fundamental concepts really helped me develop the tools. There were tools in psychology, we know that. They were mostly applied to teaching and learning and clinical services. They didn't go beyond, most of them didn't go beyond the therapy session, the clinical setting.
As you reflect on that, do you think that your observations about the world sort of kick-started this whole process and helped you in the reflective path you're on?
I frankly had always been active in my thinking about helping people, and in a naive way, as I thought of it then. But I had a fundamental. I felt in my heart that I had a role and a function in life to be of help to others, but it wasn't developed. It was a kind of a nascent feeling without being properly clothed and developed, you see.
So how did you come to be at Draper Prison? How did that happen?
I was director of mental health in Alabama. I went to the
statewide
director. I went to a prison because I had followed some of these delinquents, and they ended up in a state prison, a number of them, over time. And so I wanted to find out what kind of program and treatment they were receiving in the institution. So I went to this nearby prison called Draper Correctional Center to learn from the warden there just what was going on, and what kind of treatment they were getting.
When was that?
When? That was in 1962,
Okay.
61.
Okay.
1961. So I went to this warden, met this warden. I heard that he was a young fellow. As a matter of fact, he was quite young for a warden at that time. His name was John Watkins, and I went to him, and we met out in front of the institution. I told him who I was, and he said, "Well, I've heard about you." And he said, "I understand you're a psychologist." And I said, "Yes." He said, "Are you a clinical psychologist?" I said, "Yes." That kind of took me by surprise, because I didn't think an Alabama warden would be able to make a distinction between types of psychologists. And because it raised the feeling that I had about the kinds of questions that were forthcoming from him then. And I said to him, what are your problems here that mental health can help you with? He replied, he said, "We have no mental health problems here." He said, "Oh, wait a minute, I have one offender here who has periodic psychotic breaks."
Oh.
And he said, "I think that's about the only one that I can."
And he used that language?
Yeah, yes, he used that language. And I rolled my eyes, saying, well, thinking to myself that here's a man who doesn't understand what the problems are in mental health. But it led me to ask him the next question, which is an obvious one. What kind of problems do you have? Do you have any problems? He said, "Oh yes, we have problems." He said, they're particularly in the area of education. And I asked him, "Education problems? What kind of those?" He said, "Well, we have guys here who can't read or write. They need to be literate and need to apply themselves to learning how to read and write. We have men here who can get a GED with a little help, a little assistance, a little more training, and we have need for vocational training, occupational training, so that they can, when they get out, they can earn a living instead of stealing for one." Then he said, finally, they need some social skills training. I said, "Well, what do you mean by social skills training?" He said, "Well, you'd call that such as knowing how to, when you get out, how to talk to a prospective employer, knowing that he knows and you've told him that you've been in prison, and convincing him that you will be able to work so diligently and so hard to make money for him, and he won't regret the fact that he's hired you as an ex-prisoner. So we want to teach them how to sell themselves," he said. And of course that made sense to me. He said there are other social skills like learning how to eat with a knife, fork, and spoon. I said, "You mean they don't know how to eat?" He said, "No, they go to a restaurant, or if they go to a restaurant at all, it's to get hamburgers and hot dogs and all hands-on food." He said, so I asked him, I said, "Well, if what will that help them do with a knife, fork, and spoon that they couldn't otherwise?" He said, "It can take them to places in a decent restaurant with people who normally go to restaurants like that, and he'll associate with a different group of people." Indeed.